sorry.
That's all right.
I said, you want me to get over
Ah,
more? We're good?
It's fine.
All right, starting.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to another edition of In the Moment. I'm your host, Michael D. Jones, and today we have an amazing actor, Marine, playwright, director, friend, Mr. Dan Lauria. So,
Thanks for having me, Michael.
Thank you, Dan. You guys, I wish you knew how awesome Dan is. I'm 53 years old. I met Dan when I think I was 20. I just moved to LA.
Has it been that long?
It's been that long.
Yeah.
I know.
I deserve a medal, putting up with him for all these years.
Dan, you're probably one of the greatest people I've met, and that's absolutely the truth. This guy not only has a heart of gold, he's taught me a lot. You know, when I first moved to LA at 20, we had a mutual friend, Alonzo. He connected us, and you've been insightful. You inspire me. You've taught me so many things.
And we had a lot of good times with a lot of other very talented young people.
Yes.
Like yourself.
Yes.
People who cared. So it's been fun.
Thank you. So Dan, there's so much I want to ask you in such a short amount of time. And anyone that knows you, your iconic character, Jack Arnold from the Wonder Years, iconic. But there's so many other layers. And one of the things that you might not know, this audience, is, if I'm correct, because you showed me the tape, the first TV cable special.
No.
What was?
It was the first, we didn't know.
Okay.
It was called Where's Abe Weber?
Mhm.
And it was the first scripted show for cable.
Okay. All right.
We got a letter from somebody named Ted Turner saying we're first. And we threw the letter away. We said, who the hell is this guy? So what did we know?
I love that.
But it was on public access in New York.
Wow.
And everything on that public access was just horrible.
Mm-hmm.
But if there was no cursing or no nudity, they had to show it at least twice. So we wrote a little, and it couldn't be more than 25 minutes long. So we wrote a 25-minute script. We went to a school where they were training camera operators. We rehearsed it like an old Playhouse 90. You cut it while we were doing it. And then we brought it to the cable station. And they said, well, we'll look at it, but we can't guarantee you more than 2 showings like everybody else. Not that it was that good, but everything was so bad. They showed it like every day, 2 or 3 times a day, begged us to show it a second month. And then we did a couple more. But then, you know, like most, we had a nice group of people together, but then everybody wanted to get bigger. I wanted to just keep doing that, try to bring back Playhouse 90. But
I love it. This is why you inspire me so much. You know, I moved to LA, like I said, about 20 years old. We had this mutual friend, Alonzo. He was an actor. He was in production. And I came down here, and you told me where to go for acting class, which I went to Playhouse West, and that didn't pan out for me. I ended up behind the scenes.
right.
But there's so much I did learn from you, like seriously. And one of the main things is your history and knowledge of movies. And I sat there, and at the time you showed me your favorite movie. At the time, it was Captain Courageous, Spencer Tracy.
Most important movie, not
my
favorite.
And I remember that one because and this is like back in the day, Dan has such a vast collection of VHS, Laserdisc, DVD, everything. This guy, he has a library. I'm not lying. It's incredible. It's like the Turner Classic. He started it.
Well, I just gave you my laser disc and the laser player, which is very hard to find.
And I'm so grateful. And what I love about Dan is Dan has this eclectic sense of this revolving door of talent and actors ever since I met him. And he always has people over. And one of the things I'm going to emulate and copy from you is every Sunday, Dan would have these movie nights. People would come over. We're talking working actors, non-working actors. And you watch an old movie and you would talk about it. And now that Dan has gifted me this incredible Laserdisc collection, now that I live in New Mexico, I've talked to my little neighborhood, some of my actor people, and I'm like, hey, I want to start doing the same thing.
You'll have
honor. No, I love it.
Yeah.
Because I learned so much from you. Seriously.
Yeah. And you can't learn anything from the new movies because of all the mass editing.
Right.
But with the old movies, you really learn. Like I always tell young directors, if you listen to me, you'll be a much better director, but you'll never work again. because all I care now about is filling the editing machine. But I had a great mentor in Charles Durning. So what I was doing with you young guys, Charles Durning, I did that with him. He literally saw everything I ever did. I love Charles' answer to many things, which I steal now. It asked me what's the best thing I've ever done.
What's the best thing you've ever done?
The next one.
That's perfect, because that is so true. That's absolutely true.
And when you talked about going to study acting, I'm sure I said what Charles Durning always said: you should audit, and whoever you have a feeling with, that's who you should study with, because what might be right for me might not be right for you.
Right.
But don't ever study with anyone who takes the fun out of it. And like Charles would say, it's called a play for a reason.
I love that. Yeah.
You have to play. And Charlie's other thing was, when somebody would ask him, what does an actor need? He would always say, a little giggle in his heart. And it's so true. If you have that, you become a joy to work with.
Right.
You're having fun. People around you feel they are being supported by you instead of competing with you. And that's the best thing a supporting or character actor should have, is bring that feeling to a set that I'm here to support you. We're going to do the script the way the writer wrote it, and we're going to do the best we can. And don't worry, I'm here for you.
I love that.
Yeah.
And that's, again, you're more on the acting side. And while I started off that in high school and college, and then now I'm behind the scenes, I bring that same sense to a project. And I tell the directors, I'm here for your vision. I'm here to help you, but I also have to deal with the money for the bosses. However, I try to keep it fun. I really do try to keep it light, everyone engaged. And I always remind everybody how lucky and blessed we are. And but we're a team.
Yeah.
It is, in today's society, everyone gets egocentric and there's those mats, but it is a collective process.
But even behind the camera now, you see the difference. It was more, when you first started, the work you had to put in the creative budget, there was no app for it. There was
no programs yet.
And time becomes so precious that even you looked at actors as, well, we save time with this. Is this a good actor? Is it competent, or she?
Right.
Do they come to the set prepared? So time was of the essence. Now there are apps for everything. The actors every line's on a close-up, and just fill the editing machine and we'll make it later. Well, it takes a lot of fun out of it.
Yeah.
But I think the worst thing is you don't work with people in the same manner. You're not relying on them as much. You're relying on a machine that's not there.
Right.
It's that personal, chemistry between two actors is what happens between us.
Absolutely.
When I cut from your face to my face to your face to my face, what we've cut is the chemistry.
Right.
And we don't look for that as much anymore because it's not needed.
Yeah. You taught me so much. And when I watch the older movies, one of the things, and even when I'm on projects, I try to instill this with young directors, I'm like, let the actors act. Let it flow. Let it be natural. Let them play around, like you said, and feel the room and feel the space, and not always cut, because that's when some magic happens.
Yes.
And a lot of the magic has gone away because we got to stop green screen this or that.
Right.
You got 18 other people with booms and 19 cameras, and you got to remove all that and just let them go in a room.
The most sickening words I've ever heard are, "We'll fix it in post." Hello. Then what do you need me for? And writers who insist that every line be on a single two eyes in the camera instead of playing the intention of the scene.
Right.
There are moments in great films where the camera just sits there and you are frightened. It's not the editing that makes you scared.
Yeah.
It's just the tension between those two actors. We're missing that. I think the great director, Martin Scorsese is one of the greatest.
Right, absolutely.
And you look at his early films, Raging Bull and how long that camera sits there and the tension in the scene. And now you look at the new movie and every line is a close-up with two. It's like, come on, give me a break. And then he goes on Good Morning America, and he shows a clip from his latest movie. And it's a two-shot with Leonardo DiCaprio and the young Native American that's going to become his wife.
Yeah.
And then Joe Scarborough says, "Oh, you could see the chemistry." And Scorsese talks about chemistry, but not one scene with DiCaprio and De Niro was shot like that.
Right, exactly.
And I'm sitting there going, "I wish they had done that when I was there." My question would have been, "Why didn't you shoot the scenes with them like that?" You know. Now I'm only using him
for sure
because I can't think of a better director. So when directors like that are forced, because that's not his idea, he would rehearse for hours to get a two-shot that worked, that would be memorable.
Well, one of my favorite commentaries is Taxi Driver. And there's a great moment he talks about it. And if you get a chance, Taxi Driver is an incredible movie, but also the commentary. And he's got the camera on this hallway, and De Niro's off to the side, out of camera frame on the payphone.
Yeah.
And he goes, "I did that because I want you to listen."
That's right.
And it's beautiful because
that's what directing is.
Yeah.
Not filling and editing.
Exactly. And you're like, "Oh, I got to listen to the conversation he's having on the phone, but I'm just looking at this empty hallway."
Well, freaking Rosemary's Baby. Remember where she's behind the door? You see everybody in the movies in the theater trying to look behind the door as if it was going to move.
This is, great.
That's great directing.
Classic 70s cinema.
But you can't do that if every line has to be on a single.
Yeah. And that's the problem too. You do feel there are so many close-ups, so many of this, and I don't know. I do miss kind of the art.
Yeah, I mean, it's still watered down the close-up. The close-up has no purpose. And people also don't realize that John Ford, you can't be a better director. But John Ford never edited his movies. Daryl Zanuck edited. But like Ford said, the way I shoot them, there's only one way to edit. He didn't spend we got to cover this, we got to cover. No, we covered only what I want him to cut to.
Right.
And Zanuck said, "Yeah, the way he directs it's very easy to edit it because he only cuts it. He only gives me the one line on the close-up, and then I have no choice."
I was just reading an interview with Gus Van Sant, and he was talking about Good Will Hunting, and he said the thing about Robin Williams was, I mean, Gus knew what he wanted, but Robin would beg, "Can I do one more take?"
Yeah,
because he would do one funny, one this, and he would do like 5 different variations because he's like, "Gus, I want to give you everything." Gus like, "But I don't think I need all of that." But and listen, you're not going to also stop at Robin Williams, who won an Oscar,
right?
But that's something where you go back to, like you talked about, there's so many writers like, "Oh, you have to be line by line," but you have someone iconic like Robin who can come in and kind of riff and improv and make it better. And
but Robin Williams was such a pro that I'm sure either the first or second take was exactly what the writer wanted. Then he would say, "Can I have another take?" Because he's given, and I think the scene with Matt Damon and Robin Williams when they're looking at the swans, that's that long monologue. That's how to direct a two-character scene of two people talking to each other.
Yeah.
I mean, it's 2 shots basically. It's literally when they're talking 2 shots.
Right.
One over Matt Damon. You only see Matt Damon, and the camera slowly moves and it gets both of them, and then the same shot on the other way.
Yeah.
You just feel you're sitting next to that tree and you feel you're listening. You're a voyeur. You're just, and we've lost that. This talking head crap. I'm glad I'm old. I don't know what you guys are going to do. Yeah, I used to get hired because I could do 3-4 minute scene in television without a cut. I mean, I did scenes with Tyne Daly on Cagney and Lacey. I can't wait to see her in Doubt. She's opening up this week in New York. Wow. But especially when Jackie Cooper directed, it was an old child star.
Yeah,
he would say, "Oh, my 2 horses are here. Show me what you got." And we do it. And he'd say, "All right, put the camera here. Let's go."
No, I love that. And I mean, another thing that I really appreciate and admire about you, Dan, and if you don't know this, Dan he works in TV, but he would always say, "I'm going to go do a play. I'm going to go do my theater." And I was lucky enough to see you on Broadway, on Lombardi, and some other plays.
Christmas Story,
it's amazing stuff. But that seems to be your passion, your calling. What draws you to that?
Well, first of all, Charles Durning said, "If you ever go a year without doing a play, I'll never speak to you again." He never went a year without doing a play. So I never did either. Even during COVID, I did a play. So I just feel I have to. But the reason why I like it is nobody can yell cut. The curtain goes up. And then after you're really into a play, I almost hope things go wrong. Because it's like, okay, we'll get out of this. How are we going to survive here? But I just like acting. And when you're on stage, it's not like you get lost into the character, like some message. Oh, he was so into it. Well, you have to be aware. I mean, if you're going to do a soliloquy, you don't just walk out there and stand there.
Right. You
have to do it. But I love what happens. And when you're so versed in the script and you worked with the actors for such a long time, it's really magic.
Yeah.
I remember I worked with Jack Klugman a lot, and one night I came off stage and I said to Jack, boy, we were good tonight. And he said, we're always good. That's not what it's about. And he's right. It's not whether you're good or not. It's just if that magic happens when one night Jack walked off and I went in the dressing room after the show and I'm looking at him. He's just sitting there. I said, what's wrong, Jack? And he goes, did we do the show tonight? I said, yeah, what's the matter with you? And he says, I felt we weren't acting.
Wow.
I said, I don't think we were. So that can only happen on stage. Yeah. You can't really, you try to get that in moments on film. And if you have a director who will let you do 2 or 3 minutes without cutting,
right?
I mean, some of the greatest moments on film are accidents like that. Brando with the glove is probably.
Oh yeah. Well, my other favorite you showed me is your original Cape Fear with Mitchum and the egg.
Oh,
and that's a classic.
And there's no, once he broke that egg. Polly Bergen talks about it after Mitchum died. Yeah. In the rehearsal, that egg wasn't there.
So why don't we tell the viewers this incredible story of the original Cape Fear, black and white, Robert Mitchum, and there's a moment they have a scene and. You tell the story.
It's this scene where Mitchum attacks Polly Bergen. And they rehearsed it, her line, his line, her line, his line. Now they're ready to shoot.
Right.
And the set director put some eggs next to a knife that she is supposed to grab. And the only cut in the movie that you see is they did a close-up of the eggs. So Lee Thompson, great director, said, okay, you go here, you go there, blah, you do this. So now they're ready to shoot. Thompson says action. Mitchum comes through the door. And like Polly Bergen said, there was this animal in the room. I was so frightened. He said his line, she said her line, she said his, she reached for the knife. He stops her. And then for some reason, he comes up with the egg. And he cracks the egg. And there's this long pause. And the reason why is she couldn't say her lines. So Mitchum starts rubbing the egg on her. And then he says his next line as if she said her line, which makes no sense. And then she doesn't say her next line. And he says his line was, and then she runs at the wrong time. He pulls her back on her mark, does his next line. When she's supposed to run, he pushes her and actually says, come here, because that's what he was supposed to do. He pushes her through a door, and then Polly Bergen said he actually put his hand behind her so she didn't get hurt. Then he smacks the hell out of her, which is really a sound effect put in. Polly Bergen said, it looked so violent, but he hardly touched me. Wow. He said he was so. And then finally, Lee Thompson yelled, cut. And Mitchum looked at her and said, what happened, Polly? And she goes, you scared the hell out of me. And she talks about it. She did this. You can Google that.
Wow.
And Lee Thompson, being such a great director, he said, you know what? We're going to do it. And they did do it again, twice more, the right way. Matter of fact, they did it once with no egg. And Lee Thompson just said, that first take, I'm printing it.
Yeah.
And that's the one in the movie.
I love
because there were two pros that just didn't stop. Oh, I'm sorry, the cup was in the wrong place.
Right, exactly.
Oh, I can't do that. Oh, I don't know what he's saying or what Mitchum said, and yell cut. I'm going to keep going.
I love that.
But all that's kind of gone.
Yeah.
We don't do that anymore.
I mean, literally, I do spend half the time on set watching it, and then you script it, yeah, exactly. Oh, yeah, this isn't the way that, and it's like, yeah, 20 people stopping before I even shoot something. And you're like, oh my gosh, just roll cameras, let it go. And I remember years ago, I was involved in a project, and this actress was really kind of caught up. And so I told him, say, why don't you just roll the camera during rehearsal? Because she was more free, and we actually got good stuff. And once I think sometimes if you don't tell an actor something and they're just free, and that was some of the most real stuff.
Yeah, well, it's that Charlie Durning's advice about acting. Don't get caught at it, And it's true. It's sometimes people, feel, I got to act this scene. And sometimes when the dialogue is really bad, like Olivier always said, the best actors he ever saw were on American soap operas. And people looked at him and said, what are you talking about? He goes, believe me, I could not say what they're saying.
Right.
So just to make it sound like a human would talk like that he thought it was his way of complimenting those people who learn 30 pages a day.
Yeah, that's a lot.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's the thing that even from an actor's perspective, you have to give them respect because they are learning 20 to 30 pages a lot. It might not be perfect, but you know what? They're still doing a craft. It's still there.
And the ones who are work hard, it shows. I mean, I met Judith Light on One Life to Live. I played her pimp. And when Tommy Kail was directing Lombardi, Tommy directed Hamilton. He asked me for some names, and I gave him 5 names. Judith was literally the first name I gave him because I just admired how much she worked. She was so good. And as crappy as the dialogue we had was, we always tried to raise the bar. I think that was the best acting lesson I ever had. I had a teacher at college, Constance Welsh. She started the Yale Dramatic, but she gave all the males the same monologue, and we had to go in person.
Right.
It was one of the worst things I ever read. Nothing looks as dead as the dead. Do you ever walk the earth in another man's shoes? There was every other cliche in the world. And, I got about 3 lines out, and she was, Mr. Lauria, sit down, stop embarrassing yourself, And none of us did very well. It was just so badly written. And then, and this was before, CDs and DVDs and everything else, she had a curtain. We did this in front of a curtain. She pulled a curtain about, and there was an old screen. She had a projector in the back, and she showed Tyrone Power in The Razor's Edge doing the same words. And he's really good. And she said the difference between Mr. Power and what you people were doing here today is Mr. Power is an actor, and you all became critics. So when I was on a soap opera and I got the worst dialogue in the world, it's obvious it's bad. You don't need a critic. My job now is not to judge it, but to make it work. And I always thought Judith had, I don't care how, we'd look at each other like, who the hell wrote this? I don't know, but how are we going to make it work? Yeah. And we would do little things to try to make it work.
I love that. This is what I enjoy watching you and acting and all these accolades. And it's so funny because you talk about Tony. And so again, anyone who knows Dan, we're actually at his house in Los Angeles, and there's this little cubbyhole area, a little library. And he has these 2 leather chairs, and he's talking, Lynn. And I didn't know he was talking about Lynn and Tommy. And they wrote at least part of Hamilton here in his little cubbyhole room.
They had already written. It was between when they moved from off Broadway to Broadway. And Tommy was out here, and Lynn didn't stay here, but he came over. One day I came in, they were sitting there talking about, we're moving, we're making a few changes.
I love
good luck.
But Dan's always saying, you're like, so-and-so's here, they're doing this, we're doing that. And again, there's this revolving door of so many people, of artists, and I know it's just crazy. And I love it. And that's what I admire and respect about you, because you're always helping someone else out or giving them guidance.
Well, when you see the talent, we did a reading once it was Charles Durning, Wendy Malick, Jessica Chastain, and Michael Urie. And Michael and I see Jessica once in a while, but she always says the same thing. Oh, I mean, you gave me so much confidence, but it was so obvious. They were so talented. They were that notch above, and you hate to see it ruined. I remember working with Hilary Swank, and she was going through a lot of personal problems, and I told her, you got something special. You really got to put all this aside. I think she got a little offended that I was more concerned about her acting ability than her personal life. But I didn't run into it for years, but now she's won 2 Academy Awards, and she just looked at me and goes, "You knew, didn't you?" I said, "Yeah." And you never saw her again or anything, but there are certain things. There's certain things that just come out. It doesn't mean you're going to get a break.
Absolutely.
There are a lot of actors 10 times better than I am, never got a shot at something like Wonder Years, but you got to be prepared because it may come.
Right. Well, I mean, and that's something too, you've done, like I said, such an iconic character and other roles. It's so funny. I remember one year I was flying in a plane, and you know how sometimes on the plane they got the TV and they're doing Law and Order. There are 2 different episodes, and you were in each one, each separate.
2 separate ones.
Yeah, the football coach, and
there's thank God for Dick Wolf. He kept all of us alive.
And just and that's just so funny. Like here, this eclectic thing, but then also going back to your, and right now, why don't we talk about the play that you just written? Now, you've written a play. I have not seen it in person, but I saw some of the videos you sent me, and I read it, and I loved it. It's absolutely, first of all, it's just beautiful. I think it's beautiful because I want to touch upon the story about it, but I think it's wonderful. And when it does come out, everyone, you have to go.
Yeah, well, we're supposed to be up in March, middle of March in New York.
Okay.
So we did it upstate New York, and we did it in the Berkshires. Patty McCormack did it upstate New York. Jody Long did it in the Berkshires. I'm going to be doing it with Patty in New York, and hopefully someday I'll do it with Jody out in LA. But it's a simple play. It's a man and a woman, older man, older woman on a bench. They were comedy writers. They now have dementia. And each day they meet, they write comedy, and they fall in love. And it's called Just Another Day. So, I mean, I don't know how you make an upper play about dementia, but this is a feel-good play in the sense that what it's really saying is no matter what happens, the creative spirit should not and will not die in the most creative of us. I don't care how many AI machines they come. I don't care how good the scripts are. Those who have to write will write. Those who have to act will act. And, the theater's hurting right now, especially off Broadway and regional theaters. They didn't bounce back from COVID, but it may come down to, like Joe Montaigne said, it may come down to Wendy Malick and Dan Lauria doing a 1-act on 34th Street on the corner, directed by me, while Tony Shalhoub and so-and-so are passing the hat around,
You have such an eclectic range of friends too, which I love, and you're just such an eclectic person. And I admire and I respect that about you. And also someone who I want to give accolades that served in the military. You are a former Marine. Yeah. You are heavily involved.
Never say
in
that.
Veterans.
You never say former.
Sorry. Okay. You're still
a Marine.
You're still a Marine. I apologize.
Always, once a Marine, always a Marine.
Okay, there you go. I should know that. My father was a Marine, but but thank you for your service. And again, there's a lot of things that you do behind the scenes, which is you're involved in veterans and events and programs. Can you touch upon that a little bit? Because I know that's dear to you.
Well, I think most of the actors who I've met that I admire do get involved. I mean, if you're going to get this platform, especially when you're on something like the Wonder Years, if you don't use it to help others, karma comes back.
Right.
I remember working with Tom Hanks. I heard all these stories about how nice he is and everything. And then I met Tom Hanks, and you know what? He's even nicer. I mean, you're just shocked about what a great person he is. Now, I don't know him that well. Matter of fact, I didn't act with him. He directed me in Earth to the Moon. But we talked. I told him I was a veteran. He said, let me know if I can help. So, National Veterans Foundation, we had an event, and the man in charge said, "Do you think Tom Hanks could donate, stuff for auction and everything?" So I called the secretary, and the secretary said, "I'll get back to you." The next day, she said, "Tom has a lot of stuff for you. Come on over." And I said, "I'll drive over." He goes, "You better bring a truck." And we did. We rented a little U-Haul. He had basketballs, Wilson posters, all signed for the events. And I said, "Well, that was nice. If he never did it again, fine." Next year, I called and he said, "Any chance we can?" "Yeah, send a truck." And every year he has, if you called Tom, he was there for the vets, And it crosses political lines too. Like I'm as liberal as they come. They used to kid me I was the most liberal Marine, And John Voight can't be any further to the right. But you call John to help for the vets, he's there. We may differ in politics, but he's always there for the vets. And I think because he knows not only is it the right thing to do, but he has the platform to bring attention to it, So right now, I wish more of my actor friends would. There's so many great causes, but the regional theaters, I just got Richard Kind and James Pickens to go to a New Jersey rep in Long Branch, 60-seat theater. Not only did they sell out, they extended 2 weeks.
That's amazing.
And it's going to help keep that theater alive. And you know what? They had a great time. They called and said, "When we saw how small this place, we were ready to kill you." And then they said, "But we had a ball." And they were, who cares if you bomb? There. And if you are successful like they were, the play gets published and moves on. And now they're looking forward. Find us another play.
Well, I love that. And again, so during COVID, I spent some of my time in New Mexico with my daughter. I was sequestered here with Dan. There was another housemate. But the thing you were doing with regional theaters, where you were getting celebrities to do videos to raise awareness and money for all these regional theaters, like you were doing it. And this is what I love. Again, a lot of people talk about it. You're doing it, and you had Bryan Cranston. There were so many names. You had a ton of people.
Yeah, Lou Diamond Phillips, Wendy Malick, Judith Light, Priscilla Lopez. Just Richard Kind. There's 72 of them. So I'm going to leave people out. But the idea was they read something they wrote, or read something that inspired them, or told a theater story. Longest one's 10 minutes, shortest one's 3. And the idea was the regional theater, they were closed for COVID. So they either had to give you your subscription money back or postpone it for another year. But either way, they lose that money. So the idea of this was I was going to give their subscribers 6 of these a month if they would let the theater keep their subscription money. And we raised about $4 or $5 million. In some theaters, like Laguna Playhouse, they made over $500,000. So they made more than if they had run the season. And of course, there was no expense because there was no shows going on. But everybody would ask me, "How did you, get people like this, John Lithgow?" And I said I called them. I didn't even know. I met John Lithgow twice. "Hi, how are you?" He called me, "Dan, what are you doing?" I said, "Well, have you read my book?" And luckily I had his book. I said, "No, John, but I do have it." I'm showing him on Zoom. I said, "I won't read it." Well, my father ran a regional theater in Akron, Ohio. And he tells a beautiful story about his mother. And Bryan Cranston read from his book. And he said, "I sold more copies of that book from that little video." So, people said, "How did you get these great actors?" I said, "I asked them." Everybody. Alfred Molina, I didn't even know. Again, Alfred Molina, I met once or twice. And I got Stephen Root to do one. And Stephen said, "Who would love this is Fred Molina." And I said, "Well, I met him, but I don't know him. I don't have his number." He said, so Stephen says, let me talk to him.
I love it.
So I come home. It's 2 hours after talking to Stephen. "Dan, Fred Molina here. Stephen Root says you're an absolute madman and I must talk to you." So I said, well, Fred, here's what we're doing. I explained to him. He goes, oh, Dan, I love this, but I'm not a writer. I said, come on, Fred, all the plays you've done, you didn't get drunk one night, write something on the bathroom wall. He goes, well, if the bar is that low. And he said he would do it. And I hang up and I figure, well, I'm probably going to bug him every week or call him all the time. 2 hours later, the editor, Jeremy, calls me and said, I didn't know you knew Alfred Molina. I said, he did it already? He goes, yeah. So I call him back and I said, Fred, you did it already? He goes, oh, Dan, I found this journal and I'm having so much fun. Do you need more? And Fred Molina is a real theater rat.
I love that.
He just did Inherit the Wind at the Pasadena Playhouse. He's a real theater person. So, and he knows that the art of acting is really being diminished. I mean, we are the verbal and the oral history of our culture.
Yeah.
And they're diminishing in that. And,
let me touch upon that, because you have again, extensive library, and it's just all the biographies and memoirs of everyone. Where's yours? When do we get the Dan Lauria autobiography?
Oh, I don't know. I like telling the stories, but I don't know about writing them down. I like to write, as you know, but
one of the best things you read to me is you told the story about the white picket fence.
Oh, no, the post.
The post. To me, I assembled the post next to the picket fence, but again,
I just read that for a charity event.
That was a beautiful, beautiful story. But again, you're so prolific. I want to read a book. I actually want to hear the audiobook. That's what I want to hear. I want to hear the audiobook from you.
Yeah. Well, I do a lecture at college, and sometimes I get into some of the stories. But I like going to the colleges, and I'll show 2 minutes of a movie like Argo, and I'll go cut till the audience understands what a cut is. And then I'll say, okay, yell out cut. The next cut. 27 seconds later, they yell cut. I say, you've just seen the longest take without a cut in the entire movie. And it won Best Picture.
Yeah.
And Ben Affleck, the director, who I think is a very good actor, by the way, did not get nominated for direction because there is no direction. It's just all cuts.
Yeah.
So then I show Cary Grant and Rosalind Russell going around the desk for over 3 minutes. And they usually don't yell cut. They start applauding.
Yeah.
And then I tell them about having breakfast with Cary Grant. And I like telling those stories.
I love that. And man, again, you've shown me from an early, I saw like the original Nightmare Alley. And all these old classic films that I've learned to appreciate. I mean, I've always loved film, but I appreciate it more. Yeah. And I really do. And I love finding these old ones. Like I watched an old Barbara Stanwyck and Humphrey Bogart recently. And just, things that, again,
that's
like
the one
matter.
where Bogart tries the Scottish accent, right? Where he's a horse trainer.
No, he's the painter.
Oh, the painter. That's the other one. This is to Mrs. Carroll.
Yeah, exactly. I've never seen.
Yeah.
It was very interesting. But again, you watch these classics and you're just like, oh my God, it's so beautiful, and the way it's lit, and you miss the beauty of black and white.
Black and white's the actor's friend. I mean, you look at somebody like Elizabeth Taylor, those eyes are really purple, and you're looking like that. You're not listening to the word. So I guess what is that saying? Life is in color, but black and white is more realistic.
Probably.
They say that on Turner Classic Movies. But I agree with that, and but I liked, I was lucky, not that I got to work with them, but I got to meet the National Veterans Foundation. I can't even say it now. It's James Stewart, Jimmy Stewart.
Oh yeah.
I called him General because he was a general in the Air Force.
Oh my God.
And Bob Mitchum was there, and Cesar Romero, Charlton Heston.
Nice.
And I liked, and Charlie Durning got me into all this stuff, and just sitting there listening to them. Some like to talk about acting. Other than Mitchum, you couldn't get him to talk about acting. He'd tell you funny stories. He was a good storyteller, but it wasn't much about acting. He found it very easy. The other guy talks, you listen. He stops, you talk. That's about the most you get.
I love it. Again, I think it's so nice to kind of just, you sit there and you engage. And I remember years ago, and I was just visiting. I was visiting on set of a movie, and it was with Jeff Goldblum and Clarence Williams III, and Bill Duke was directing. And I was just hanging out there, and Larry Fishburne, because I was anyway.
Yeah,
and it was great. And so I remember this And we're sitting there, and Jeff Goldblum would come and ask me these weird questions, and he would go off, do a take, and come right back. And he was a lawyer. It's just weird because he was like picking my brain. He would go do a take and come back.
Yeah.
And it was just all these things, but you sit around just incredible actors like that.
Yeah.
And at the time I was really kind of hanging out with Larry Fishburne. And because one of the first things I ever did, I was an extra. And I got to be an extra, and I was part of the jury with Gene Hackman in this movie called Class Action.
Yeah,
so for 2 weeks, I got to watch Gene Hackman, Don Moffat, who was the judge, Larry Fishburne, all these people, and I'm just watching, just soaking it, and it's just great. I'm like, oh my gosh, what is this? And I loved it.
Well, Hackman was Marine too.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
He just passed. Yeah.
Did he?
He was the second oldest living actor who won Best Actor.
Oh my God.
Somebody said he was the oldest. He went, no, Bob Duvall's still alive. And he had him by a couple of months.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I love how you, Bob Duvall, all these people.
Well, that's what he said.
Yeah.
I met Robert Duvall for 2 seconds, shook his hand.
Oh my gosh.
But I would have loved to have talked with him because he did so many of those great early television shows.
Yeah.
And
you've shown me so much too back in the day. And again, where it was then to where it is, I still think there's a lot of great quality television. There really is. When you let people act and really do the thing, you get moments.
Yeah, but there could be so much more. I think everybody listening to this, if they go to their computer and they Google GE Theater, I Am a Fool, you'll see Ronald Reagan as the host. And Eddie Albert plays the narrator, and James Dean plays him younger, and there's a 16-year-old Natalie Wood in it. But it's the production value you see. It's all shot on a set. And what we really need is an anthology show where somebody like George Clooney, who loves Hollywood, knows also, and not one of the nicest people you ever meet, come out and say, tonight, my friend Sean Penn is going to be playing a clown based on this short story by and the screenplay written by. And then we do it. And at the end of the show, he walks out and says, we're going to next week come tune in, and my friend Julia Roberts will be playing The Nun, written by so-and-so. And the reason why we don't have it, I don't care what they tell you. And the reason why we don't have it, it's never, and this is what Charlie Durning said, it's never been about money, never will be about money, it's never going to be, it's about power. And on those anthology shows, the power was with the artist. I didn't care what you did the week before me. I'm doing what I'm doing. It doesn't have to, style doesn't have to be the same. And you can't say, when you say, well, money, what money? You get the best actors, the best directors, the best writers for a one-shot deal at the lowest price. Their salaries don't go up every week. So that's not why they don't do it. Now, we got hurt when Spielberg tried it and he didn't do it, but he made 2 major mistakes. One was he wouldn't go on camera. He didn't introduce the show. It was just a chair that says Spielberg Presents. And the other mistake was the 2 he directed got all the money, and the others looked like crap. You have to. You can't give
credit.
You can't give Sean Penn less than Julia Roberts. But anthology show, and I don't know why. And the host could even change every year. You could have Hulu Presents. And each do one a month. And then you add 15 minutes of unused, like scenes or thing, and you add that to it after you show it, and you release it overseas as another medium, another film or another TV.
I love it.
It's all, and God, the writers you get the best, You look at Playhouse 90, look who's writing those scripts. Rod Serling, Patty Chayefsky, Reginald Rose, Sherwood Anderson. They were the best writers we had. Lillian Hellman wrote, and now you can't do that now. And it's not because of money, it's because of power.
Well, I remember back in the day, you used to have this thing called it was Patrick Kaufman Entertainment. I know it was the Playwrights Kitchen Ensemble. I believe it was like every Monday, and Dan would get all these actors, and again, all famous actors, they'd come out and they would read a script.
We would read a play.
A play,
and the purpose,
it would be for an audience. It was fantastic.
The purpose was to get writers literary agents, and there'd be one rehearsal. usually on Sunday. Sometimes you come in a little earlier on Monday, and then we would read it Monday nights. So it was a way for, really good actors to get back to the theater, even if it's just for 2 days. And, we started one a month for 6 months, then 2 a month for the next 6 months.
Right.
And then 1 a week for 9 years.
Yeah, it was a lot.
We read 486.
Yeah, it was a lot. And at top of it, that's when you were doing the Wonder Years. Because I would visit you
I started,
And it was just amazing. Again, this is why you're always involved. So now I know that we have the play coming up.
Yeah.
That you're going to be doing
in New York. Yeah.
What else do we have for Dan Lauria? What else is there?
I don't know. I refuse to, piss on my 50 years in the business and self-tape. I don't mind self-taping if I knew the person who was going to get that job self-tape. But they asked me to self-tape for very good parts. And the last 4 times they called and said, "Oh, you're our first choice. Don't make any plans." All 4 of those jobs were given to somebody who didn't self-tape. Now, don't get me wrong. All 4 of those actors were great. Ed Murray,
right.
He won Best Actor. Bo Bridges, a friend of mine. I mean, these guys are great. I was honored to be mentioned in the same. But why did you make 30 of us self-tape when you're going to offer people that? And of course, the union now with the new contract, all you're allowed to ask is, are there offers out? So the last 3 self-tapes I was asked to do, I said, are there offers out?
Right.
All 3 said the same thing.
Wow.
Not yet. I said, you know what, guys, I am not gonna piss on 50 years of work. And the compromise is so obvious. You got offers out, take our reel, take our disc instead of a talking head. That's what, you can't make, you try to talk to young kids about what can happen in a room. It's like trying to eat this table because they've all come out of college now. Instead of doing plays, they have done 10-minute movies.
Exactly.
And they're very proficient with it, and they do it over and over again. But you don't know what it was to go in a room. Pat McCormack, great casting director. She's retiring now, but she told us a great story about what her job was as a casting director. She would see a ton of actors, narrow it down to 6, 7, 8, that we have a callback, and bring them into a room, and there the writer would be, the director would be, and at least one of the producers.
Right.
And you did the scene, and she always hired an actor. That was, matter of fact, that was my first job in the business, was being a reader, for a professional casting director. And she said, and I love this, she said, I became the actor's agent in the room.
Ooh.
So Michael auditioned, you leave, she'd come back and she said, okay, now you're going to see Dan Lauria next. I saw him do this, I saw him do that. So you came in, you said hello, but somebody had already given them, even though the resume was there, she gives them that insight. And then you would audition. And she said, and things that would happen, she loves telling the story. She says, I saw Dan do Al Capone in Vespers Eve off Broadway, and we got good reviews. So she brought me in for a gangster. And during the middle of the audition, her phone rang. And I grabbed it and I went, slammed it down and went on. And she said, we were afraid not to hire him.
I love that.
And then also what the young kids don't understand, when you can get to act in front of everybody, I can't tell you how many times I auditioned, didn't get the job. And then 2 months later, the same people call me back in and go, oh, we loved your last audition. You were just too ugly, but now we got the perfect role for you. So you not only were auditioning for that role, you were auditioning for that director, that producer, that writer, who are going to do other things. And they remember. They remember. Absolutely. If you do something special in a room, even if you don't get the job, nobody's going to remember a talking head that looks like every other talking head, because that's what self-tapes are.
You're right. And it is sad because I think it has lost out. And I remember when I was on the opposite side behind the camera, and I would sit there, because generally when I'm doing movies, I'm not always involved in casting. There's a few times I get to go. And you're right. And I would sit there with the writer, director, etc. And they would give notes like, hey, and I remember one time there was a young lady that came in for one role. she wasn't right, but they stopped and go, hey, but we want you for this other role.
Sure.
And that was nice because you're able to see it and you're like, oh, you know what? She would fit better here. And you can just move these Tetris pieces right there in the moment, like you said. And again, it's organic. It's in what you're feeling.
Yeah.
Because again, what you're bringing into a room is so much different than, you're right. I'm watching 30 tapes all day long. Oh my gosh. Oh my
Right.
gosh.
And the people who are watching the current tapes today, a lot of actors are going to play, oh, they don't watch them all. And I go, why would they have to? If somebody goes to the casting director the day before they're going to hire somebody and say, look, this person is going to play opposite this person. So nobody over 6 feet, nobody with blonde hair, nobody. So some assistant is going to go, well, no, here's 50 self-tapes. These 40 are not going to get it no matter how good they are. So I only have to look at these 10. Now a producer walks in and goes, number 5. Nobody has seen anybody act.
Yeah.
And it's really demeaning. But again, like Charles Durning said, it's not about money, it's about power. I would rather have somebody who looks right, who, even though I got to do 10 takes from different angles, than have somebody who's going to come in and really blow it out, really make that moment and everybody looks inadequate. So it's almost like let's peter down to the lowest common denominator. And I'm glad I'm old. I don't. Thank God. Charlie Durning was very prescient. He saw all this coming. But the one thing he said was, the only thing that'll be safe is the writer. Boy, if he saw what was going on with AI and the writing, and the writers survived this contract, but they opened the door to AI, and the next one's going to be more and more. I think he must be spinning in his grave.
I haven't delved in. It's funny, my daughter sent me some pictures one day. She's like, Dad, look at my new stuff. I'm like, okay, great. And I didn't even know. She's like, Dad, those are AI. That's not even me. And I had no idea. I'm like, what? She's like, yeah, I did this thing. I'm like, it can do that? Like, I haven't. Oh, yeah. And I'm like, oh my God. It's like, wow.
Oh, they got an AI for sermons now. You take a quote from the Bible, you put it in, it'll give you 5,000 words, 10,000 words. You can gear the intelligence. Like, I wanted for a group of people that are 10 degrees higher on their, IQ scores, or 10 degrees lower. And they're good. I asked my friend who's a retired minister. I said, are they any good? He goes, they're pretty good, Dan.
Wow.
You can take the first 2 years of a show like NCIS. None of the characters are there anymore. None of those actors.
Right.
And you can update it to the cast now, and 20 years later, terms and all of that, and you will not know it was written by somebody else 22 years ago.
Wow.
And they're good scripts.
That's scary.
You will not know they just copied something from that long ago. I used to have you saw it. I would have some writers from TV shows come here and watch an old TV show like Naked City to steal the storylines because they were so much better.
It's so funny. It's amazing what's going on right now. And listen, we're coming out of the strike. You were involved, the actors. I'm on the movie side of things, so it's like you got the union, and it's just. I'm hoping that we can all kind of figure this out, because that is kind of scary. Again, if AI can kind of come in and again manipulate your image, your likeness. Here's the thing. So I watched a documentary the other night. It's an Andy Warhol documentary, and they said in the beginning they go, Andy's voice is AI generated, approved by the estate of the Warhol Foundation, whatever.
Yeah.
So you got Andy Warhol talking when it's not. And I'm glad that he had the disclaimer.
It's his voice, but yes, he didn't say those words.
Wow, and that was the first time I really had seen it in a show.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my gosh.
Well,
that's interesting.
Great actor, Ed Herman. He made a lot of his living reading books and doing narration for documentaries. There's a new book out read by Ed Herman, and Ed's been dead 8 years.
Oh my gosh.
Now, I'm sure his estate is getting something.
Right, yeah.
But if they wanted more or they press it, the producers of it said, well, look, we'll just go further back. So you may hear a brand new book read by Clark Gable or Humphrey Bogart or Barbara Stanwyck or Rosalind Russell. Whose ever estate has expired, they can go back.
That's scary. It is scary because again, let's say 50 years down the line, whatever, and someone wants to do a book about something I don't even like.
Yeah.
using my voice. And that's something where it's here, like, wait a minute, where are the
Well,
rights?
it gets scary every time I turn on the TV. I'm not sure who's saying what, or we dumb down the audience so much that this country elected Donald Trump. And I'm dead serious.
Yeah.
And I'm saying that to my Republican friends who are more like a Romney. And, you know, I worked with John McCain. You couldn't find a nicer man.
Right.
Political aside, you know, if he was president, I wouldn't have felt, oh, my side lost. I would have said, oh, we'll be okay. John's a good man.
Yeah.
You know, but we are just dumbing down. I don't know who's speaking or what's speaking, or people are taking Twitter as if it was real. There's no thought in the TV shows.
There's not. And so I heard something today, and now I guess there's the conspiracy about it is because, you know, Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce's in the Super Bowl, and they're like, oh, well, Taylor is a liberal, and, you know, they're going to go against the Republican. And it's like, who creates these storylines? It's so stupid.
I have no idea, and I'm sure they're both very nice people and intelligent and generous. But you know what? I would rather take my political point of view from a different source. I would like to take it from the David Frums on the right side, or even George Will, you know, and then Rachel Maddow on the left. I'd like to hear debate and discussion. You know, I grew up with that. I remember my father was a truck driver, but we would hear what was his name? Gore and Gore Vidal and Buckley.
Oh my God, that was
I didn't ever understand half the words, you know, but I knew I could understand. By the time it was over, I understood the conservative view and the liberal view. And they always misquote this, but there's an old saying, any young person who's not a liberal has no heart, and any old person who is not a conservative has gained no wisdom. But that's not the end of the quote. The end of that quote is, and whoever dies either dies a fool.
Ooh.
See, and I would like to know the best of both, but we're not going to get that.
No, and you're right. Like, everything is pared down to 60. I don't even know what a tweet is because I turned off Twitter, but everyone goes to the end and think, oh my gosh, that's real. So-and-so said that, or it's the truth. And yeah, you're right. This media, everything has been so distorted, and you're like, you don't even know what's what anymore. And again, we have to hopefully be smart, aware, and smart enough to, like, okay, you know what? This is some bullshit. This is kind of accurate. There's truth in everything. How can I be a smart person and decipher that and put it together?
Yeah.
And this is where I feel like us in the arts have a responsibility. It's not a responsibility, but, you know,
it is a responsibility.
It's putting something out there. And for me personally, this is my own personal belief. I'm very aware about what I want to do and who I want to work with.
Right.
Like, I've told my agent, there's certain material I just don't want to touch because I don't want to be involved and be associated with that. And that is my take on it. And I just feel like we have an opportunity now to really enlighten a lot of people, because the young people are coming up. It's so funny, you know, Cat Williams did this big meltdown podcast. Anyway, out of all that, the one thing I loved, he said, he goes, we're not paying teachers anything yet. We're always talking about how children are the most important thing in the world. He goes, kids are getting raised by iPhones and iPads. They don't know how to do cursive. They don't know how to spell. They don't know how to read.
We just played an athlete $700 million.
Exactly.
Yeah, come on. Yeah,
it is sad.
I just heard Laura Dern speak at the Environmental Media Awards, and she brought up a good point about we really have to approach things as a community. We can't just say, oh, I disagree with them, I'm not talking to them. Right. And she was saying the farmers know how important it is to regenerate the soil. So we shouldn't be at odds when it comes about the environment. Yeah. You know, people are seeing their houses washed away by flood, regardless of what your politics is. There's a common ground, there's a community there, you know, and there's so many things like that. I mean, 70% of the women want free choice. That's not an argument.
Yeah,
that means 70% even on the other side. There are a lot of people that we can be. Yeah. There are things, but we cannot take the information off of the screen or the internet. We have to go and talk and present things. but we got to talk in a more rational manner now. Everything is so hate oriented. It's hard.
It's, I'm listening to Arnold Schwarzenegger's book, and I love it. And one of the things he talks about is when he was governor, he had set aside money and the ventilating system, whatever, just in case there was an epidemic. Right. And then when COVID happened, he was no longer governor, and that stuff had sat around and it went to waste. So what he did was he called all the hospitals. He goes, "What can I do?" And he goes, he didn't put this out in the, he didn't want people to know. And he put up $1 million and he bought ventilators and PPE and all this stuff. And he goes, "I did it because it was the right thing to do."
Sure.
Hey, it doesn't matter. Hey,
Republican.
It's like, there's people dying in the state. I have some money. I have a voice. I'm going to do this. But he goes, "But don't put it out there that I did this." He was, and I just loved hearing that because, again, no one cares about party lines at that point.
Right. If you read his statement to the Russian soldiers when they went into the Ukraine, it was so heartwarming about you're fighting on the wrong side. When you talk about his father. And, now I was a big supporter of his opponent, Phil Angelides. And, I don't know Arnold Schwarzenegger. I never met him. I never worked on any of his movies, but I worked on the Special Olympics one year, and he was there. And he did the typical celebrity thing with the camera people and all that. And believe me, my opinion did not go up. And then when it was all over, I was working with a couple of kids. Everybody's gone. I look over at the high jump thing, and there he is with a couple of kids with Down syndrome. And he's working with no cameras, no nothing. My respect for him went right through the roof. Wow. There was nobody there, Right. So I think I wish the public would see more of that side of the actors I know, like Tom Hanks or like Arnold Schwarzenegger. Because I hate when they yell, "Oh, we're all liberals." Well, come on. Schwarzenegger's a Republican. You can't be more liberal than Tom Hanks. Right. And they're both very nice people. Right, exactly. I'd like to put them in a room together and hear how they would solve these problems. And I think that message would get people out there. And then I think the Republicans would run another Romney or McCain, and we wouldn't hear all this negative stuff about Joe Biden, who John McCain told me something. He said, "That was my best friend." Wow. In politics. Yeah. And, Biden was the one who the MC at his funeral, gave the memorial in Arizona, and I think it's important. I did a movie. I just finished a movie about Ronald Reagan, and I got to play Tip O'Neill, and Dennis Quaid couldn't have been nicer. But that's all we talked about, is how the two of them were polar opposites, but they were good friends, and they got a lot done in the background. I love that. And we need a little bit more of that. We do. Dan, this has been amazing. Any parting words, any advice, anything you want to shout out? No, go to the theater, go see something live. Charlie Durning always said, if you sit through a bad play, it may be the worst night of your life. But if you sit through a great play, you will remember it for the rest of your life. I don't know anybody who hasn't seen Hamilton and walked away and said, "That's special." I have yet to see it. I will. I know it. When you get to New York, I'll call Tommy. Well, now I could probably get into it. At the time, it was just like, you're telling me I can't even get in, and they were here at my house. Oh, no. They've been great. I got to pay. They don't give me free tickets, but I do get the house seats. So, but I remember bringing Tommy to my agent in Lynn and saying, "These are the two most talented people I know." And my agent said, "The Puerto Rican guy doesn't sing that well, and the director looks like Clarabelle with black hair." Oh my God. Don't you love that? Don't you love that? I remember, what's the old story? Clint Eastwood and Burt Reynolds. Yeah. And the casting director says something is like you can't act. And he was like, "Well, I can learn how to act, but you'll never get rid of that damn Adam's apple," or something like that. Something like that. That was an old Winston Churchill line. He was drunk at a thing, and this woman who was not very attractive said to him, "You're drunk." And he says, "Yes, and you're ugly. Tomorrow I will wake up sober, and you'll still be you." All right. Well, Dan, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. I appreciate everything you've done for the community, the arts, and just as being a human being and as a friend. So thank you very much.
Okay, buddy. Dan Lauria!
Love working with this guy.
Thank you, sir. All right. Thank you.